And welcome to the Regional Transport meeting. Have we started our recording? We have started our recording. We do have a quorum for this meeting, and I'll start with Karakia. Whakaturia mai ki te uru kahikatia, whakaturia mai te uru taumatua, koutou rana pakia katia, koutou rana kaupeka hia, kia ranga whawha, kia aorangi, he whakamaru maru, he whakaruru hau, iti iwi e, ui, wiro, tomai te Māori, homi e, rui e, tai here. In fact, I had apologies from Ms. Mackle, Brown, Broughton, Gordon, Bowen, and Major. Oh, they're here. Just checking to see if, just checking. There's an in-house joke about my phone, so we're not going to explain that. But thank you for the text. So there's that. In fact, there's no. We have apology, do we? Oh, Councillor Eads, an apology. He's away today. Conflicts of interest. I'm not aware of any public forums and deputations. We don't have any extraordinary and urgent business. We don't have any. But I'll get to that. I was going to get to that. We have notice of motion, but we do have a couple of items that we will take in general business at the end, and one from Mayor Broughton. Anybody else got an item they want to bring up? No. Right, we'll go to 7.1, which is the unconfirmed minutes of the meeting on the 23rd of February 2023, and we're just looking for any corrections that are required there. There's none, so moved by Councillor Mayor Broughton and seconded by Mayor Bowen. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, that's carried. So the next item is 8, which is the Canterbury Regional Transport Committee resolution status. Again, they are pretty self-explanatory, and I don't think there's anything coming out of that. So if you're happy, we'll just move on. So could I have a mover for that, please?
Just note the year, Jane. Should say 2023.
Oh, it should say 2023. Yeah. So thank you, Mayor Brown, seconded by Mayor Rowley. Who's got a question?
Brown.
Yeah, I've asked several times, but the Mayor of Ashburton sent a letter dated 24th of May 2022 asking for what the underfunding was of the Canterbury region.
Yeah. Sorry, Neil. Do you want that answer now, or do you want to go to general business item?
It needs to be sorted one way or the other, so why don't we do it in general business?
I prefer to take that at general business. We do have.
See you tomorrow.
Really? Prefer to take that in general business, Neil, if you don't mind. And we have some explanation around that, where that's at. So thank you for raising that. So moved by Mayor Brown and seconded by Mayor Rowley. Sorry, again, I missed your hand.
I have a question, and it's probably addressed to the mayors that attended the Royal Provincial meeting last week. I understand that that the Royal Provincial strongly backed the universal road user charges as the key component of the solution, a funding solution. Is that correct at the Royal Provincial meeting last week? And if so, it was just making the note that road user charges are not actually in the options, actually in these minutes, and I just wondered if there was clarification there.
There were a number of interventions that were raised through the meeting. There's one that will be on the agenda, most likely for the LGNZ AGM, promoted by Neil Holdham, which includes lots of the ways that he would like to see, and supported by many councils, a change to funding and distribution of those funds across the country. So ERUC was one thing mentioned, but it wasn't the only thing mentioned. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Ian. Anybody else? Okay, let's go to the motion then. Moved by Mayor Brown, seconded by Mayor Rowley. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against? That's carried. Thank you for that. We'll go to 8.2, which is the regional speed management plan policies. And like maybe Jess, you can pick that up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just invite Tiara Thorby up to the table to speak to this paper. So the purpose of this paper is to seek agreement from the committee to the proposed 10-year policies for the Canterbury Regional Speed Management Plan as required by the Land Transport Rule regarding setting of speed limits, which we've presented to you on previously. So I'll hand over to Tiara to take you through the paper. Thanks, Tiara.
Kia ora. The purpose of the report is to brief and update the committee on the Canterbury Regional Speed Management Plan. We're seeking agreement from the committee to the 10-year regional speed management policies. These policies will be used in local territorial authority speed management plans. We've developed 6 policies in collaboration with the TAs and staff who are working on the local speed management plans. These have also been endorsed by the Transport Officers Group. The policies align to the Waka Kotahi speed management and state highway policies. They also align with the Road to Zero strategy. To meet other requirements of the rule, staff will be using measures and objectives previously agreed to by the committee used in the Regional Land Transport Plan. This removes duplication of work and ensures strategic alignment of these documents. Regional staff will continue to take a light touch approach as agreed by the committee in February. While staff are working closely with TAs to ensure a one network approach is taken across Canterbury and consistency will be applied to speed changes. The Director of Land Transport at Waka Kotahi has announced deadlines for speed management draft consultations by 5th of October 2023 and final speed management plans by 29 March 2024. We have understood the rule to set out the requirements for consultation for a regional speed management plan only apply if information contained in a regional speed management plan is different than the information already consulted on and contained in a territorial authority speed management plan. As we are taking a light touch, information contained in territorial authority speed management plans will mirror the regional speed management plan policies agreed to today at this meeting. The Canterbury Regional Council are undertaking a wide transport-themed engagement sessions later this year. Regional speed management plan policies will be included in these engagement sessions with the community. Is there any questions?
Thank you for that. So is everybody reasonable with this? So we've got the opportunity to talk, to ask questions. Thank you, Mari.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. May I just ask, I note 14 talks about Hiranui not having prepared. I'm not over this and I'm not sure whether I should be or whether I've missed something at a local level. Can someone provide me some information so that I can either follow it up or not, please?
And though that's okay, there is work going on. There's just been a bit of a change of staff. So at the time of writing, they're not formally notified, but there is work going on and they are getting up to speed. Waka Kotahi is also working closely to support the new staff members. So yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I'm aware that we've had some staffing changes around there. So as long as that's the reason and we'll be brought up to speed, that's fantastic. Thank you.
Mari, do you think you need any more help with that in terms of support around that from here?
Look, I'm probably not sure how to answer that, Pete, but I guess that if I can follow it up from my end, and if we do need any further support, I will reach out with that.
Thank you. Other mayors. Thank you, Mari.
Thank you.
Other mayors. Sam?
Yep. My question's around what's the ability to change speed limits before this wider work, and is everything on hold until we get to that point, or is there another route to be able to make one-off decisions where safety of the community is obvious and a decision needs to be made.
So through you, Mr. Chair, my understanding of the rule, and officers will correct me when I go beyond strictly accurate. There is an alternative. There is provision for an alternative route for emergency or extreme situations. So the rule envisages the normal 3-year cycle for most of the network changes, but you can, as an RCA, highlight a particular place, for example, that needs treatment outside of that cycle. And yeah, there's provision under the law to do that. So
This is a very specific issue, but it might respond to other places as well. The last couple of years, we had, so Highway 1 reduced to 70 speed limit, particularly dangerous section, and it was temporary analysis is now being complete, and if you look at one, that work actually being done, we can see it all. We're pretty upset about that. But there's no reason why it should be looking at 100, and it feels like we've now got a space where look at a particularly dangerous section, acknowledged by everyone that it needs to be reduced, and because it's now no longer temporary works, and because there's now waiting for this piece of work, we're going to have 6 months of an increased danger to our community. So I'm looking for an avenue. Is there some support from this group? What is required to have a faster turnaround than waiting for the big review? And maybe there's other intersections you've got within your district as well that this would apply to.
Burnham, that's intersection. Oh, okay.
Is underway at the moment, and you guys can submit to the State Highway Speed Management team any intersections or any bits of state highway that you believe need to be looked at sooner rather than later, and they will be reviewing those as well. So yeah, if you can advocate to Waka Kotahi to the State Highway Speed Management team, I encourage you to do so, and we can encourage your officers at my level as well.
So, Mr. Chair, if I just finish off that, I have received such a request from the Mayor, and I am happy to acknowledge the receipt of that, and we are exploring our ability to do an out-of-cycle change for Duns Crossing.
Pull the pin too quickly on the recommendation, so we'll put it up, I think. See how we go. So there we are, 8.2 Regional Speed Management Plan Policies. Would someone like to move that, please? Thank you. Thank you, Sam. Seconded by Nigel. Any further discussion on that matter? Pretty clear. So all those in favour of that, please say aye. Those against, say no. That's carried. So 8.3 Regional Land Transport Plan Review Monitoring Framework, Significant Criteria and Significance Policies. That's you, Claire, isn't it? So thank you. Welcome to the table, Claire, to run us through this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a series of papers that we've been doing in the development of the Regional Land Transport Plan, and these particular aspects relate to significance policy and also the monitoring framework. So the monitoring framework has had minor changes to it to reflect the changes to the strategic framework that were made in February, and also better align some of the indicators based on other regional land transport plans so that we can be comparative across the regional land transport plans. We've also looked at the significance policy. There's kind of two aspects here. One is significance in terms of what activities will get prioritised, and the other aspect is significance for any variations to the plan later. So I'll talk first about the approach to significance for identifying activities for prioritisation. We're recommending a change in approach from the 2021 criteria, which was developed during COVID. And the criteria were based on a dollar amount and scheduling, but didn't reflect the impact on the strategic framework for identifying a significant activity.
So we've changed the criteria so that it more reflects identifying activities based on their alignment with the strategic framework, so they can then be prioritised, rather than it being solely just the money and the time frame. And then the other aspect is the changing the significance policy in terms of when you would need to make a variation to the plan, and in particular when you would consult on that variation. And this change is one that we're recommending also be, there's another recommendation for that change to be effective for the current plan as well. This would mean that activities that are in the plan in the on the horizon section as being activities the committee has already said they would like to see happen in Canterbury and that have already been consulted on, that if they get funded, it's not considered a significant variation to the plan and then require us to consult in year 3, but that it enables Whakakotahi and the councils to just get on and do it without having to jump through a consultation hoop for the RLTP in year 3.
Yeah, clarification is that if it's within the plan on the horizon, so those things that are in the distance somewhere, the consultation process is not required if you bring them forward. Okay, so everyone understand that? Good. Thanks.
So that's it. Any questions on the monitoring framework, significance criteria, or variation policy?
One thing, because this is all about monitoring, isn't it? Okay. In the appendix 1, it's got about connecting ESC, rail, all that. But then it goes down rail movements from and within Canterbury, but it doesn't say airport. Shall we put that in there? So any airport in Canterbury, or are you happy with what's written in there?
We can take that away and look at it. We did have to look at what data sources we had available. So the activity management, the investment management activity class that we're funded through currently doesn't fund us to collect new data. So we are limited in the monitoring framework to what data we can collect, which is also why, there would be other indicators that could be quite good to look at, but without the funding to collect the data, we couldn't propose it.
This is for the freight systems. Hey, okay, and the other thing, further down, just a bit of clarification at the measure, kilometres of active transport network, including walking and cycling, will include kilometres of footpaths. We might want to also add in additional measure on kilometres of footpaths resurfaced each year, because especially in Christchurch, should we do a measure on that to know what we're doing, or is that just a bridge too far?
So ideally the indicators will indicate a shift in the transport system as a whole. So resurfacing a footpath, it would depend on what that would show the committee about how the system was shifting to support active transport modes. So extending the kilometres of footpaths in Canterbury would give you an idea that there was more ability within the transport system for people to walk. The resurfacing of it, that might be more appropriate at the road controlling authority level, where you have responsibility for ensuring that those footpaths are maintained, but potentially not at a regional level. But like that, yeah.
Just to follow on from that question from Phil, then, is the life left in the asset measurement then not helpful? Because if what we're doing is renewing roads, and we could compare that to walking and cycling spaces, and then we could actually see whether we are providing the same levels of service across both, and our funding actually matches the need to improve walking and cycling. And it's going to be in the metros where that sits.
Yes.
As a measure that might be helpful for you, Phil? I don't know.
Okay, yeah, so we could look at that under like the maintaining the network space as well, and have something around the walking and cycling. It is dependent on what data is already collected, so it might be that there isn't data across the region that we can collect in on that. Yeah.
It's all very well to go charge ahead making miles and miles of footpaths and cycleways, but if some of the ones which we're lucky enough to have, which are actually getting a bit older, so starting to become a bit second hand, and if we don't keep on top of it, we're building more and fixing less.
Yes.
Just to add to that, I think they're good points. I think we can take that away and have a look at how we can measure that. I think the activity management plans that each of the councils will probably cover or have some of that information available that we would be able to work through with the Transport Officers Group to understand collectively across the region where we stand and where we need to get to in that respect, similar to road maintenance. Yep.
I guess one of the other areas that, for me, we may need to look at is that those 8, as Sam said, Broughton said about the aged assets that we have on our, and the fit for purpose assets that we have, not only on our state highway, but also on our others. You know, the amount of pylons we've got in rivers now, in terms of their ability to let water pass. I mean, if you drive over the Rangitata Bridge and you drive it and you look at that, or the Rakaia Bridge and look at that rail bridge on the other side, you think to yourself, man, there's some snag ups going to happen there. Maybe you drove over to Timuka Bridge, the same thing with the bridge on your left-hand side going south. So, and James, I know that funding comes out of National Land Transport Fund for things like rail assets. What do you think?
Sorry, Peter, what's the question? Yeah, look, yes, and looking at the measures for the well-maintained network category, it's understandably focused largely on road network, but as frankly, the networks that we are funding and maintaining are broader than that, and particularly as we add the walking and cycling network, I think there's a very good argument to be made to, as the data sources are available, to broaden that out and understand asset condition and the maintenance of all the networks.
There's a question around the significance piece. So last time we did our regional land transport plan, there's a lot of conversation around which we also bring our own districts projects into this, and we want to see our districts projects in that list. By saying yes today to this significance policy, how much does that set the tone for our next RLTP? And then I guess it's for all of us to understand the types of projects that are going to sit in the regional level. That doesn't diminish what we're doing within our own districts, but just they're not significant enough, which sounds, significant enough to fit within this criteria.
Yes, and I think the reason about why having things that were regionally impactful or significant is because there are some activities at a local level that contribute to a regional shift that aren't necessarily over $2 million. That would be good to reflect in the plan to show that kind of integrated transport shift. We have had discussions as officers of how we're going to do that. And I think that will come down to maybe some clarifying principles or criteria as we have those discussions. But we've got a pretty clear strategic framework, and the officers know the improvements. So it's just about us as officers trying to stitch that together and bringing back to you a good list. That makes sense.
Through you, Mr. Chair, 2 points on that, one building on yours, Sam, and it is still somewhat frustrating to be sitting here in another meeting without a draft GPS to talk to, because so, with that caveat in mind, you may or may not be aware, many members may or may not be aware, but the next GPS, as far as I understand it, envisages a much wider catch of projects, such that wider than those which you might expect to be funded through the NLTP. So in that sense, you're actually applying the significance criteria more widely anyway, and you really are trying to capture as many local, any district projects as you can, because the way the GPS is couched, if you're going to qualify for other funding opportunities through the 3-year cycle, the project has to have been caught in the RLTP first. Right? So you are starting from the premise of trying to catch as much as you can, which I guess is a challenge to the significance policy. But I think that's all manageable. And so yes, you are trying to draw the through line between local up to regional impact. So that's one point. The other point is just to remind members and officers will correct me when my memory fails me, in terms of the change of significance for on the horizon projects for this current RLTP, those projects as listed as on the horizon are the Woodend bypass, the Ashburton second bridge. I'm going to go out on a limb and say the bridge in Huranui, the one lane bridge in Huranui, and I think it's those 3 only, but that's where my memory fails me.
It also has the Orari Bridge and it has MRT.
That's my concern, is that we've gone through the last 3 years of different government funds throwing out different opportunities, streets for people, all sorts of, and it's like, well, they were never in this RLTP round, and so we've missed out on the ability to grab the funds and through the route that the government actually wants to be able to give away the funds. So we've hamstrung ourselves a wee bit. So I'd much rather see this be broader and wider, so that when after the election, new governments want to throw more money at different projects, we already have those captured within our plans.
Through Mr. Chair. So talking about criteria and policy here is 2 different things. So criteria being the criteria listed for activities and the policy around significance for engagement or consultation. So, but I was just thinking as we were talking with the last regional land transport plan, we had the resilience projects around the Pages Road Bridge. Was the only resilience project that made it into the RLTP, but I think there were a number of other ones as well that didn't, because they didn't meet the requirements at the time. So the new criteria may allow other activities that weren't necessarily captured by it being more enabling in some ways, which would then be the types of projects that you're talking about in there, Sam, in that regard. So I think that's where the benefit comes from expanding the criteria here, to allow some of those other projects that may not have made it in previously, but may do in the future. So, yeah.
Was there someone prepared to move there? Thank you, James. Speaker by James. Any other discussion about that?
Just briefly, Mr. Chair, noting the comments, which it's been a good discussion point. I think the changes seem to be good, and they're bringing forward significant projects easier, is my read of it. As long as they're in the plan, the priorities align with the current national direction. I've always found the process around the, I have since we've been involved, RLTP, NLTPs, the misalignments with our cycles, with our funding, with our long-term plans. So, this is a step in the right direction, but there does need to be a significant change. And I'm hoping that at some stage, no disrespect, James, but Whakamutunga does pick it up on our space. I realise they're in with the processes they're in terms of the GPS and all those other things, but for a person outside of that, they don't understand all that. They just want to know that it's included and that we're doing our jobs the best that we can to make sure our projects align. So I know that there's been a bit of work going on with discussion at LGNZ level through Mayor Neil Holdham's work, which I think is actually very good in terms of trying to get a better alignment there across the board. So we all want the same thing. It's just making sure that we can get it there. It's very frustrating for anyone that's sitting out there, including our community, as we heard last time round when we went through the process, not understanding how all that alignment occurs, and including us when we found the National Land Transport Plan came out. It took weeks to decipher what was actually in there and not in there. And we're having media queries coming to us asking us, so are your projects in there? We have no idea. So we've got to try and work on that better together, because at the end of the day, it's about making sure we've got a plan that we all understand and can work on.
Sorry, thank you for that. Any other discussion on that? So we have a mover and a seconder. Those in favour, please say aye. Those against, that's carried. Moving to 8.4, and I think you're online, Luke. Do you want to talk to this just briefly? It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah,
Oh,
thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
In there?
Yep.
Oh,
yeah,
great.
we can.
Well, look, I'll keep this really brief because it's more of a procedural item than anything else. So at the last meeting, this committee resolved to appoint Mayor Dan as chair of the Regional Road Safety Working Group, which is one of 2 staff level forums that report up to this committee as working groups. Since then, Mayor Dan has had a change in his commitments, and another member has come forward and expressed an interest in the role, being Mayor Murray Black. So this paper simply is to revoke that prior resolution that this committee made at its last meeting and make a new resolution to appoint Mayor Black as the new chair of the Regional Road Safety Working Group. So happy to answer any questions on it. Otherwise, I'll just direct back to you.
Thank you, Luke. I think it was pretty straightforward, and thank you for that. So we'll just put that resolution up. We need a mover and a seconder for that. Moved by Mayor Bowen and seconded by Mayor Brown. Any discussion? Murray, do you want to say anything to that before you get?
No, thank you through the chair. Thank you for giving confidence that I'll be able to continue to do the sterling work that, or the platform that Mayor Gordon has set down, and I look forward to working alongside Luke. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Murray. So there we are. Any further comment? If there's no further comment, all those in favour of that, please say aye. All those against, and that's carried. And may I say thank you, Dan, for what you've done, because I think you revitalised that link, which was a bit squishy and a bit dead. And I wish you all the best, Murray, with that responsibility. I'm sure you'll be fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, 8.5, and I think it's you, Jess, is it, or Luke? So, yeah, Jesse's going to speak to this, Luke.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you. The purpose of this report is to provide the committee with the unconfirmed minutes of the last meeting of the South Island Regional Transport Committee's chair group, which was held on the 13th of March this year here in Christchurch. Just a couple of things to note. Councillor Kate Wilson from Otago was elected as the chair, and Councillor Stuart Bryant from Tasman is the deputy chair of the group. We had a number of briefings from Bryn Gandy, from deputy chief executive at the Manawatu Waka Ministry of Transport, Ember Spate, director of regional relationships from Wellington, top of the south at Whakatahi, and Gary Eichen, the South Island infrastructure manager at Kiwi Rail. And we worked through with the chairs on the day through a workshop around some of their priorities for the next triennium. And one of the key focuses of that was around resilience. So we are doing some further work in this space to support that committee, and we'll continue to report back through. So that was just the first meeting of that group with a number of presentations, as I said, and we're just working through their feedback into a program of work that we can then work with that committee, that chairs group to take forward. So a number of over work streams with the work that we're doing here through the Canterbury Regional Transport Committee as well. So happy to take any questions, but hopefully the minutes are explanatory of where we got to.
Thank you. Just a comment, I guess, before we go. Oh, Sam. Sorry, Sam. Go. Oh, just a comment before we go. I think this is a really good forum to get ourselves lined up in our thinking across those regions. When you get to deal with Tasman, the West Coast, Marlborough and Nelson are somewhat isolated. We have easier conversations with South and Otago, and so it's good to have them in the room and see what their priorities are. And also, I think this is an opportunity to maybe talk from a South Island perspective, and there's a lot of things pulling at the South Island in terms of boundaries and where people want to do things and takiwas and all sorts of carry on. big waters boundaries and all sorts of things. But this is a pure conversation that we have around transport, and I think it's a good one. Sam.
Yeah, my questions around how we support you in that context and how we might all be able to contribute to the South Island's discussions, just noting the amount of investment that each of our councils makes in the network for the South Island, and each of the regional chairs being from a regional council, not necessarily having the same connection to a lot of the work that TAs are doing. What's the connection there, and how can we support you in making sure that that sort of Canterbury piece is in that wider conversation? I think there was good value in the South Island. I think you hosted it last year, Peter, or a couple of years ago. Having a wider invite with a transport focus for the South Island could actually be beneficial to us. And so, was there any discussion on hosting another one of those later this year? Or could we look to do something like that? Because I think we would all benefit from coming together, and maybe that's part of Zone 5 and 6. I don't know, but a standalone transport focus conversation could be really helpful. And the second piece for me is just on Picton's sort of picked up in here, and just noting there was what report yesterday or the day before around some opinion about the use of Littleton and connection for ferries to Wellington. Was there any discussion on that at this forum, and is there any work that we should be thinking about doing in helping the movement of transport people and freight between Wellington and the South Island being linked more strongly into Port of Littleton?
Well, I think that's a really good bunch of questions in there, Sam. I think one of the things that we were trying to achieve when we set this out was to try and join ourselves up and not get in the road of each other, because I'm saying things that just don't make sense in terms of things that we're doing. And I'm very loath to talk about these things because I've got my mayors in the room here who own some of the assets that I would get to talk about. But I think our port strategy across the region is something that we need to be a bit more mindful of, and how that links with rail, where we do things, those sorts of things. It's not really our wheelhouse to be discussing those things. But when you get to talk to Otago Regional Council, of course, they've got a port and an airport that they deal with, and Southland have got a port and an airport. And Tasman and Nelson, and and so on. So there's different levels of conversation there. But from a point of view from our point of view, from a regional perspective, is that we need to have some connectivity through the things that you're talking about what effect are those two big ferries going to have when they start bringing 3 trains each into Picton. I mean, I think they're spending $200 million in Picton for the facility. Those trains will need to go somewhere, and they're probably coming here. So, we need to think about how that all works. It's really nice to see that the regional hub Daniel is getting underway, Neil, and that's something that we did support way back, saying that if we want to use rail, effectively we've got to hub it. So I think there is an opportunity, Sam. I think there really is. I mean, I think that thing that we did with Kiwi Rail when we went out to, we went on that journey out to Sydney was worth it. And maybe that's what we should do with Kiwi Rail. But once they get themselves sorted out, maybe we should jump on a train with Kiwi Rail and go down to Dunedin and just talk about those things when we do that. Maybe go to the coast. I don't know, because it seems to me that there's a big conversation that be had about that interlinking, and the big conversation that we have, guys, is how BKT reduction. How do we reduce emissions? What levers do we get to pull to do those things? How's the funding going to happen? And we know with some of these things that if you're a regional council and you've got no asset, because Phil's got the asset last year, how do we do that?
To me, it's not about who's got the asset. I'm thinking about what is the way that, as a South Island, we get the best out of government investment and our local investment. And so, if we leave it to political parties to pick the particular things that they want to achieve, and neglect all the things that we know we need to have done. We did a South Island freight study probably 5 years ago now. Those things should have been top of the list of, we should be advocating that all political parties actually deliver these things for us, because we've already worked together to know that those are the things that we want to get done. So where's the stage 2 of that, and how do we have a conversation about how we bring those projects and advocate for them together as an island? So we actually give rather than saying, hey, please help us, we say, this is exactly what we've decided we need. We're in it together. Now partner with us to give us the delivery.
Thanks, Ben. So that's exactly what we covered at the workshop with them and on the day. So all of those, raising all of the transport issues. So this was the first meeting of the chairs, some of which were new. I think over half were new to their roles in that respect. So part of the day was about bringing them up to speed on the state of the transport network and the challenges that we face. Then it was about steering us where to from here. And so there are a number of projects that have come out that we've talked about amongst the South Island managers, of transport managers, that we want to take back to the next South Island RTC meeting. We've agreed to quarterly meetings rather than 6 monthly meetings. So we can take back a program of work which will include things like looking at the South Island freight study again and those type of things. And certainly take your point on the freight summit that we had, because that was hugely successful, but we only did cover land transport, rail, and the ports, the seaports. We didn't cover last mile freight, we didn't cover air freight, so there are a number of other aspects to that as well which we could pick up on. But what I just take comfort that we've got a bit of an idea of a program of work that we'd like to cover, and we can bring that back through the RTC and give a bit of visibility once we've spoken to South Island chairs. Yep.
Oh, sorry, Danko. Nico. Okay.
I was just going to say that just noting that perhaps the better vehicle might be to consider, pardon the pun, but is the zone 5 and 6, because it does pick up all councils and asset owners. Then you haven't got the issue about whether it's regional or whatever, it's the asset owners that are there. So as I'm sure Mayor Brian, because Mayor Brian and I are both the chairs of those, I think that would be a discussion we'd be welcoming being involved with, to see how that we can come together. Because I think Sam's right. If we don't start to pick up some of these, then again we'll be through an election cycle and we're no further ahead. So I think it makes perfect sense to pick up on that work and then find the best mechanism of pulling it together within our structures.
I was just going to say we had a reasonable head of steam up on this South Island. We don't care about North Island stuff going forward, and discussions that we were having with the minister, in fact, and the minister said how he enjoyed coming down here and having this conversation with us. But we haven't progressed those. And there's a few things I've got on the road which you'll be well aware of, which people are fighting down on stuff like this. And until those things are over the line, I think we're still going to have a bit of a muddle in terms of what we can and can't do. So, but I think it's a good idea, Dan, actually. I think maybe we should be making an opportunity for us to have a discussion at that group about what we're trying to achieve. And that can then filter down to the mayors. Anyway, so yeah, and that group is chaired by Councillor Kate Wilson from Otago. James. Oh, James.
Oh, thanks, Peter. Look, however you organise the conversation, inevitably someone gets left out. So simply the reminder that if it's a Zone 5, 6 discussion, then you do need to, if you wish us to be there, you do need to remove the Whakamutunga and Kiwi Rail aren't part of that and have a significant contribution to make. So.
And we would carry those through from that group because I think we had the Zone 5 Whakamutunga person at our meeting, and we had Kiwi Rail, certainly had Gary Eichen there. And Mike Heisenbustle today is an apology for this meeting because he's with the Prime Minister at the Hillside Workshop, so otherwise he would be here. And we've written to the Minister to ask him if Mike can be a part of this group. We haven't set.
Yes, through Mr. Chair, we wrote to the Minister, but there was about a 2-month delay in terms of him even getting to the letter. So at this point in time, so which was the response that we received. So we're waiting for a response. Could I just add that the resilience piece was a really key part of what came through in the South Island discussions, which obviously involves Whakamutunga and Kiwi Rail in those discussions, particularly around movement of people, movement of freight, the value of those networks, and some of the real key challenges around some of the climate change related effects that we're having in terms of floods and slips and those type of things. So it was a very much a flavour of the conversation. Some of the stuff we're experiencing in Marlborough, stuff we've experienced here in Canterbury, and obviously it was right off the back of the cyclone up in Hawke's Bay. So yeah, so that's certainly going to be reflected in the program of work that we want to deliver with South Island chairs and obviously involve this group as well.
So just adding on to that, and I don't want to get off topic too much, but that resilience is really, really important to us. As a regional sector, we've gone for rivers resilience to Uruka. We had a joint bid in for 250 million a year for the country for resilience around rivers and doing all sorts of things, not rather than building stop banks higher, actually assessing rivers. And if we need to move stop banks, we'll do that. And, how do we actually maintain a network of safety, if you like? One of our concerns about that is that was ignored. We had as Darren Ponter, the chair of Wellington Regional Council, said, we had it in a box with a bow on it, and I handed it to the ministers, and they dropped it. And he is particularly angry about that. We've done a bit of work with News Talk ZP. We are going to ask for a meeting, Darren and I are going to lead that piece of work. Hopefully with Kieran McAnulty and Kiritapu Allen. But I think the point is, Dan and Sam, that needs to get dropped into 5 and 6 because we need to flesh that out a bit more. We can carry that so far. We can make all the indications in the world about it, but it's your communities that are going to miss out. Your communities, so we look at flood damage just quickly in terms of the work that you had to do, and in the Mackenzie, and still haven't probably coped with some of that from that last flood in 2020. And that's the stuff we're talking about. That's the stuff being able to get to that we're talking about, and that's been dropped, and we're not very happy about that. So they have put 100 million into Hawke's Bay and into Tairāwhiti, which is fine. We haven't got a problem with that. But when you talk to their chairs, when you talk to Hiniwai, Ormsby and Rehet, they can still see the need for the stuff that we're talking about coming through too, because this is about filling a hole, and then what are we going to do after that? So we'll see how we go. We'll see how we go with this in the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks. See where we get to, and maybe we should just drop that in. Just let it go down. The regional government is not down, is it? It's across, or is it up to you guys and LGNZ regional? We're one thing. And the other point being that the other players like SR, Whakamutunga, Kiwi Rail, Chorus, Transpower, and the insurance companies. Because the insurance companies have made it pretty well known, if we're not going to turn up and do work, we're not going to turn up, they're not going to turn up. So that's where we're headed with all this climate change stuff. Anyway, we're up for that. So I think we'll put this up and move on. Everyone happy with that, or do you want to speak to that, or you want an opinion on that? Craig, yeah, happy. The Craigs are happy. All right, so recommendations on screen. Can I have a moment, please, for that? Thank you, Nigel. Seconded by Craig Rowley. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favour, please say aye. All those against, that's carried. Now, general business, extra business that we had. We'll go to you first, Sam, and then we'll go to you, Neil.
Thank you. My council's asked me to bring to this committee a request around state highway review and a feeling that the changes that have gone on since any last changes to state highways means that there's lots of changes in traffic use, lots of heavy traffic now on our roads that didn't used to be there, and would as requested ourselves a review of that to Whakamutunga. James has come back and kind of said that's not happening. Or you can tell the room, James, will do that. But the feeling from my council was, is there support from the Regional Transport Committee to ask Whakamutunga to undertake a review of state highway designations on current roads and any new new roads to be included in that. And if there was, then could a letter be sent from this group to request that? And the answer might come back, yeah, we've done it and there's no change, or yeah, we will do it and there might be some change. I don't know don't want to prep what the answer is, but the growth in our community has meant we've now got some significantly used roads, far more than perhaps where some of our state highways sit, that we would see as needing extra support from Whakamutunga.
Yeah, James, I'll get you to write that.
So if I just slightly clarify our position back to Selma District Council, it was to say that our view was we wanted to be able to update the criteria under which we assess whether something should be a state highway first, and that had been an issue of discussion between ourselves and the Ministry of Transport for some time. But that was a reply we gave to you over a year ago, and we told you that we would be back on that. And so I think it's a good discussion to have. So.
Yeah, I'm just always mindful. You need to be a bit careful that if they increase somewhere, they normally take it away somewhere else. So there's a lot of rural councils with perhaps slightly lower state highway volume roads that would not be keen on a review of the state highway network. It'd fine if it was some new roads that they were looking at, and the lights. I know you got a lot in your area, Sam, and that sort of thing. But I just need to be careful that we don't penalise a lot of other smaller councils. Well, not just smaller ones. A lot of councils are reliant on that. If they would give back half our state highways, we might as well just shut up shop.
Just to say that I know Sam's raised it. It's something I just probably want to think about. I know what Mayor Craig said, but it's good to socialise it here. And perhaps that's something we could just give some further thought on and perhaps reflect back and add that back into the flow for our next meeting. But I don't, in principle, I'm not opposed to it, but I just would like to understand the consequence. And it may well be the same as yours, Craig. Get a chance to talk to staff about it. It's a particular piece of road I wouldn't mind controlling through my part of the world, which would get NZTA off my back trying to put a piece of wire rope barrier. That would be very appealing on the face of it, but you got to be careful what you wish for, which is effectively what Craig's saying.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, I'd like to have a little bit of time to percolate on this one also. One of the roads that I would see that would bring benefit that could be elevated into a state highway would be the inland road, which is often used as an alternate state highway, but it is all bar that 17 k's of special purpose road actually funded by the ratepayer of primarily the Hiranui district in Kaikoura. So, there would be some real advantage to our community to have that road elevated. But I'd just like to, maybe it's an issues and options paper or something like that, that probably gives us a little bit of a balance to the situation. But I do see merits in what Sam has brought to the table this afternoon. Thank you.
That's next question for James. When are we likely to see the new criteria? Did you say they're doing new criteria for state highway?
I'm going to follow that up because it's been a year since we told.
Yeah, because realistically, you need that first before you do anything. So I was just interested to know when we're going to see that new criteria.
Yeah, I agree with what Sam's saying, but this one way of doing it is making them a state highway. And we have one of those roads in Ashburton too, which is this Thompson's Track, which heads off to the lakes, very highly used. Another way of tackling it would be lift the fare rate on it to more like 95%. Yeah. And it can stay a local road, but fund it as it should be funded. Another way of looking at it.
Today, can we just seek that we do some further work and maybe bring something back to the next agenda item? And
yes, through Mr. Chair, I'm happy to pick that up with the Transport Officers Group if you like and discuss that. We can shape up a bit of a scope for an issues and options paper and clarify, make sure that we've captured everything we need to capture, and we can provide some advice back through the through the RTC with your transport officers input into that as well. So then we can talk with Whakamutunga about the criteria for the state highway changes there. So yeah, we'll take that as an action.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you. So action point noted in the minutes. Thank you, Neil. Your issue.
I, over a year ago, wrote to the Regional Transport Committee asking for, from each council, what the underfunding was of their roading network, which would assist us when we lobby Wellington to show how much we're getting underfunded. It says we've had a response, but I have not had a response today that I'm aware of. But if there is a response, we'll circulate it, because I've asked for it to be circulated. I'm still being ignored.
So through Mr. Chair, we did send a response. I'm looking at Claire and Luke's online here, but my understanding is we did send a response. We were doing some further work in this space as well, so not just looking at what was not funded through the RLTP process, but also looking at what the potential, if you were to maintain the network to its optimum standard, what would be the gap? And we are doing some further work on that as well. We've got a memo being drafted at the minute, which wasn't available in time for this meeting. We do have statistics around percentages and values around how much each TA was funded for road maintenance through the RLTP and what the gap was. We can recirculate that. We can circulate that tomorrow, absolutely, and the response to you again. But in terms of the further work, we were hoping to bring that through, but we just didn't have that ready in time. And we've also been working with the Transport Officers Group to better understand that across each of the TAs. We haven't had a response from all TAs, so we've only got a select number. I think Ashburn, Selwyn, Waimakariri, possibly Huranui, I think as well. We've got some information, so we're intending to circulate a memo, and what we'd like to do is actually with the GPS hopefully arriving soon, and we were intending on briefing this committee about that, whether we circulate a memo ahead of that meeting, and we also pick up that discussion while we have the discussion around the GPS, because the two things are inherently linked. So I'll take an action from tonight to circulate that memo again to you and directly, and also we'll continue that work and brief you at the next GPS briefing.
Yeah, and Neil, if that there's no satisfaction, no satisfaction coming out, you need to talk to me also, and I'm happy to do that. Phil, did you have something? Yeah.
James, I went and saw a guy who loosely called himself your boss, Kieran. Yeah. We have got our resident survey out at the moment, and by far the leading winner is the condition of our footpaths, which is fine. And I've been purporting, and that we're going to vote on it in the annual plan next week, 2 weeks, about a roving footpath crew, which is great, and it's $2 million worth. We're putting in $1 million, and Whakamutunga here putting in $1 million. But thank you very much. But we have to use it through. I'll pick on, say, Downers, it doesn't matter who it is. We have to use the contractor of the area to be able to access the Whakamutunga money. I would much rather, and what I was trying to do before it happened, but we'd have to do it again, is as City Care was winding down, I wanted to take, say, eight of their guys, a couple of trucks and some little diggers, and just have it all in-house. But I was told you can't do it because Whakamutunga won't give us the funding because it's a council business, it's in-house. I would like to have it that you can, and that's what I mentioned to the minister, because I'd rather pay a labourer who's getting $25 an hour, $30 an hour, and he works for us, than have someone through Downers or Fort Hogan or whatever paying the same person and $65 an hour, and we get a lot more done for the money we've got, and we'd have a lot more control on it. And I've talked to some of the contractors, and they go, "Oh, bloody footpaths! They're just a lost leader, as far as I'm concerned. We'd rather, if we didn't have to do it, we'd right." So what I'm envisaging is that we get so many complaints, like someone will bring up and we'll rip out straight away, put a mark on the footpath, and sometimes the mark's there for 2 years. When we finally get round to getting it through the system, someone else 100 metres down the road, he's already complained. We go to fix the first one. Number 2 runs along and says, "Oh, thank goodness you're here. Come fix one." Sorry, it's not on the plan. So it drives them insane and it gives us grief. I'd like to have a lot more control of it with, say, a small group, maybe 8 guys, I don't know. But if I can get the funding directly to us, and I sort of know it goes if it gets the grain of it, but I brought it up with him and he said he didn't see any reason why not, but I sort of might as well talk to you about it. And the other thing is that one of my councillors asked if it was possible that one day when Whakamutunga or someone is drawing up a plan of Canterbury, that the cycleways in the Canterbury region can be put on it. Don't go to the trouble of doing one by itself, but if they can be put on, we've got cycleway map in Christchurch, but sometimes they go out to Raleigh, or they might even go further. There might be other ones that we don't know about, but if they can be incorporated into that plan when one day you do one or map, that would be good. Thank you very much.
I'm not too sure where that last bit sits, but how do you like it?
Certainly something that we're thinking about for Greater Christchurch through the Greater Christchurch Transport Plan and VKT reduction planning work. But certainly for the regional work, I think when we start to get into regional spatial planning and those type of things, we'll start to think about that as part of the transport section.
Thank you. Has anybody else got anything else? Nigel?
Sorry, not to previously brought it up, but just there's a little bit of conversation the last few months around the passenger rail link through south. Is there, and there was some work done some time ago, is there even some something we can give to the media just to sort of, because there's nothing happening in the near future, but it would be great to be able to actually put that story out there and say the reality is, if this is ever going to come up into the future, these are the hurdles that it needs to go through to get to a point of success. So yeah, put it to bed for some time. Thanks, Jesse.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So I had intended to brief you this evening on the work that we've done around the investigations into passenger rail. I'm giving the time that we had available, and there was a number of chops and changes with the agenda with the Minister with the meeting today. So we are intending to, unless we can get a separate time with all of you, which is I know very challenging in terms of your own calendars, we were intending to push that briefing to the next RTC meeting in August. If we can wait till then, otherwise we'd need to find probably a good half an hour, 45 minutes with you to have a conversation on where we've got to with the work and our advice on where we should take that, and then we would bring that through as a formal paper to respond to the committee. So we wanted to brief you on it first, and then bring a more formal response through the committee after that. Then that would be a public in a public space. Yeah,
I think maybe we should have a conversation with CDM and rather than having mayors wander around town upsetting people, we could have that briefing. We'd possibly have a workshop before that. Next time we'd have a workshop. We push ourselves at this end of the day, which is not helpful. Anybody else with? Yes, Dan.
If anyone else is having a similar issue, but it's a pity Kiwi Rail's not here today, but we're having a lot of difficulty at the moment with enrolling a cycleway plan, which we kind of got some funding from the government for. We really want to deliver it. Comes to putting it across a particular piece of rail near the railway line, and it's now becoming rather than a simple equation, it's $1 million equation. So we're finding that very frustrating. So James, I guess it's a kind of what's the right part? Yeah, with Mark. Is anyone else having a similar issue? Do we want to look at others being involved in that, or is it just because I'm happy to set up a discussion with Mark, but if others are having a similar issue, then happy to co-join into a conversation. But for our side, that's my staff raised it as a significant issue for us the other day. And we've been out and had some initial engagement working with landowners, and that is going to be a major sticking point for us. That's not budgeted for. So I'm more than happy to organise it and see if others are interested. Is there anyone else that's having similar issues there? Okay. Maybe offline we can sort it out.
Just to agree with you and acknowledge that I think it's an issue that is being experienced across the country. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't find a way to have the conversation to take individual issues forward, but Mayor Brown will note that we've had similar issues in his district in terms of timing. I think the simple explanation, I'll let Mark speak for himself when we do sit down with him, but is a resource issue in terms of people and skill. They have so much work on in terms of planning, but it is very difficult to get to the top of that pile. We are experiencing it everywhere. I know we experienced it at Ave. We've tried very hard to make sure we don't fall into the same issue in Tynwald. And I know it's impacting on your projects too, Dan. It's very frustrating. I've got the same issue in Dunedin. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't agree with Dan more. We've got a lot of shovel-ready money from the government, which is bloody great. But we've got one particular area called Scrutton's Road, where there is a country road, more or less. There's two houses over the railway crossing, which is a dead-end road. We go parallel with the railway, and Kiwi Rail want us to put in a crossing for cyclists on a road that's got only two houses on it. And the crossing, and at the moment, cyclists can ride across it, and walk across it, you can crawl across it, it doesn't really matter. $2 million for a cycleway just to go across a railway line. And it's the bit that gets at me is we have to use their contractors, and they seem to just pull a number out of a bucket. There's no rhyme or reason to the number. And all it's doing is gobbling up our shovel-ready money for no particular reason. So I'm right, anything I can do to help you, I'm right behind you.
I suggest that maybe at the next RTC meeting we have Mark present similar to what James is doing on behalf of Whakamutunga, but a bit of an update from Kiwi Rail about where their strategic work's happening, where their challenges are. We had something similar at the South Island RTC, as I said before. So we've got Mark actually coming and his team coming to present to our Transport Committee here as well on the 14th of June. So really keen to keep those conversations with Whakamutunga, Kiwi Rail, Ministry of Transport all together to inform you and for them to hear the issues and challenges that you've got. So we can maybe craft something towards the next meeting in a briefing session. Yep.
Good, thank you. Look, we've got finished now, but James, you've got some stuff. No, we'll close. Yeah, we'll close now, but we'll finish. And what's your timing on that? Like 25, 30 minutes? All right. Okay, I'll finish off. Our next meeting is on the 24th of August 2023 at 4:15, and I will do I'll now declare the meeting closed, and I will do a Karakia to finish us. So, ka whakakaria te kōrero ki te tahu o tātou whare ia te kina anō a tonu wahi haumie hui tai here. That's about hanging the conversation up on the ridgepole of the whare until we need to get it next time. Hopefully we all agree about that. So thank you.